Good morning, everyone. I'm Mike Quaranta. Welcome to the Spring Manufacturing and Policy Conference. We're going to get started in just another 30 seconds or so as people get logged in. We'll go through our sponsors and then we'll hand this off to our first panel. So we'll give it just another minute for people to get logged in and then get rolling. Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Mike Quaranta, and again, welcome to our Spring Manufacturing and Policy Conference, this one titled The Future of U.S. Competitiveness, Delaware's Innovation Advantage. We're grateful to our presenting sponsor, the Delaware Manufacturing Extension Program, DMAP. Thank you for their support of this event and all the things that they do for manufacturing in our state. Our other sponsors today, I mentioned DMAP. We're going to roll through them here in a second. Here we are. The Delaware Manufacturing Extension Program, as I said, is our presenting sponsor. Our gold sponsors are Bank of America and Delmarva Power, and we're grateful to all of them as well. Our silver sponsors, Agilent, Bloom Energy, Chemours, Chesapeake Utilities, the Keeney Company, PNC Bank. Our bronze sponsors include Associates International, Belfour Property Restoration, AstraZeneca, Delaware Bio, and the Delaware Prosperity Partnership. Edgewell Personal Care, FMC, Nimble, M. Davis, and Mount Air. Novo Nordisk, Sheet Metal Workers, Local Union Number 19, and Gore. And our friend sponsor, IGEN. With that, let me turn it over to our panel host, Scott Malfitano of CSC Corporation, who's also chair of the Delaware Workforce Development Board. Scott?
Thank you, Mike, and good morning, everyone. This morning, we're actually going to talk a little about what we're experiencing. We have all-time vacancy highs. There's more demand for products and services in our businesses, and we're all asking the question, where did our workers go? So today we have a great panel, and we're going to talk a little about their labor challenges, specifically in the manufacturing market across the state, and then we're also going to get a national perspective as well. But first, I'd like to kind of give you a little feedback and introduction. As Mike said, my name is Scott Malfitano, and I am actually chair of the Governor's Workforce Development Board, and I started that role, the governor asked, in September. So new to it, but learning a lot. Here's what we are today. We have more jobs than people in our state. And actually, if you talk to the governor will say that he goes to any kind of the national governor's conferences, whether you're Republican or Democrat, everybody asks, what's your future workforce look like? Mike Quaranta and the chamber asked, what does your future workforce look like when we talk to businesses? And of course, Kurt Foreman and his team with DPP does that as well. Delaware is a little unique. We do have more jobs than people. But at the same time, we're a little unique, and I think we'll find that national perspective that a lot of people are facing the same thing. But we're a little unique because we face those challenges from DC, Baltimore, and Philly for talent, and even New York. If you're in Des Moines, you compete with Cedar Rapids for talent. If you're in New York and in Syracuse, you compete with Rochester for talent. Here, we work with a lot of large cities because of our location. And not only those large cities, but also the growth and everything that's going on and taking place in Maryland as well on our border. So one of the things we have to do, and we're learning to do, is focus and compete for talent. We're going to have to compete against those states. We're going to have to tell what the Delaware story is, what we're all about. One of the areas that we're competing, and the governor did it with Executive Order number 1, is the creation of the Delaware Prosperity Partnership, and it's working. We're finding new businesses moving to the state. Now we have to find that talent to fill those roles. Nationally, one of the things that we're seeing, obviously, with the pandemic that just took place, and those being interviewed, one of the things that's taking is that there's a huge shift in values that individuals have. It's not just a job to create the job shortage. Some of that is due to childcare, flexibility in the workplace, and even some comments that people said they have flush with cash. That was a Wall Street Journal article. And what came out is somebody said that they actually had a couple $1,000s, and it's money they didn't have before. So they felt more comfortable. So there's a lot of nuances that are taking place. Recently, a Pew Research study was conducted in February of 2022. It said why people quit their jobs. Number one was they cited low pay. Number two is no advancement in opportunities or growth within their company. Three, they felt disrespected. And what that meant was they were getting fewer hours. Even boldly on this one, they were told to get a vaccine. Others, that was the data that came from Pew. And then the other one is that they had, what huge costs with child care expenses. So actually what we found out that one of the things that Pew also said is those that quit, the majority of those individuals took a new role with another company and actually had greater pay. But one of the caveats there, asterisk, is those individuals are mostly college graduates. So something that we have to take a look at. One of the things we've also found over the last several months is Delaware has some antiquated rules. They need to be evaluated. We need to take a hard look at some things. One of the growth areas in our state we're taking a look at is manufacturing. We're seeing huge growth. We're seeing huge growth in industry and building that's going to take place over the next 5 to 10 years in our state, excuse me. And one of the things that we have this great apprentice program. What we have to do is find out, though, is that we need to have more individuals there to help train those apprentices because there's a demand. And number two is we have a rule in place that says that you have one individual with 3 master electricians to move on and gain experience. That seems so backwards. It almost seems to have 3 apprentices to 1 master electrician. So things we need to evaluate and take a hard look at. The other thing that took place is obviously the Great Resignation. We hear all about it. And that has led to the largest growth of self-employed in our country. It's 5.8% in January. Some other studies are indicating that those individuals that are self-employed now are facing healthcare questions and support issues as well. So we're going to talk a little about some of those items today. I'm going to introduce our panel, and we're going to jump into some questions here for everyone. First, I'll introduce our individual panel members, and we'll go into them individually. But Taryn Damaso, who is the head of operations for feminine care at Edgewell Personal Care in Kent County, and also Dale Cook in Sussex County, who is the director of HR for Mount Air Farms. We have Nikisha Bailey, who is the director of HR manager for Dot Foods, and Ron Painter, the president and CEO of the National Association of Workforce Boards. So we'll get a good sampling here and viewpoints from everyone. So Taryn, I think I'd like to start with you. With Edgewell Personal Care, it's obviously manufacturer in Kent County. Can you tell us a little about your company, a little about your products and what you're learning? I know also, if you could address this, is that you have a severe labor shortage that we've heard about. Some discussions that you've had with the chamber and others, that your company is actually considered not only leading the state, but possibly the country. Can you share with us what your company's experiencing?
Yeah, good morning. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Taryn Damaso. I'm the head of operations at Edgewell Personal Care. And I know people may not be familiar with Edgewell, but anyone that's been around Dover knows and has heard about Playtex, right? The Playtex plant. We've been here for over 90 years and about 25 years in our current location. We do make feminine care products, Playtex Sport tampons, Playtex Gentle Glide tampons, Carefree liners, and Stay Free pads. In addition, Edgewell also is home to other brands you probably know of, like Schick, Banana Boat, Hawaiian Tropic, Wet Ones. So we have a global manufacturing footprint in many US locations. And definitely in talking to my peers, the Dover site has been the hardest hit from a labor shortage. We've all suffered across the United States, especially these last few years. Dover has been the worst. We've been about, at times, 30% below the headcount that we need to make the product that we need to meet our customer demands, right? And when you're that far below, it means you're not meeting customer demands, which means we have to evaluate, are there some products we should make other places, because we can't make everything here in Delaware. So it is absolutely a business strategy we're looking at because of our labor shortage. we've done a lot of things these last few years to try to close our labor shortage gap, right? We've done all the traditional things like increasing wages, increasing sign-on bonuses, things like that. We've partnered. We've always had a good partnership with like Polytech or Deltech, but these last 2 years we've created apprenticeship programs. We're working with Deltech on utilizing interns for people in their electromechanical training. We actually now are even partnering with high schools, right? Trying to raise awareness and interest in manufacturing in high school students. We see that that's very important for the future. And we've done some other things from training internally, like we've looked at some of our requirements and now we're saying, you know what, if you don't have a high school diploma or a GED, come on, work for us, and then we'll help you get that GED. We've also created lower level jobs because we are a very automated, high technical plant. And so some people just can't come in and immediately do that higher skilled job. So we've had to create some lower skilled jobs, and then we do training on the job. So that's all been very successful for us. And we've been able, actually, in the last several months, we've seen a turn, right? I don't know if it's the child tax care credit coming to an end or other different things. We've seen a turn. We've actually, in the last several months, have closed quite a bit of our gap, even though we still do have a gap. But so we've had like 39 new hires in the last couple months. But then that creates a churn on the organization as well, and extra work and trying to make sure we're providing the support we need for all of those people. So that's kind of where we're at. I just want to add, as Scott was talking about some of the growth in manufacturing that we expect to see in the next several years in Delaware, that actually really scares me, right? Because our ask of our government officials is, don't make it harder for us, right? Care as much about existing businesses like Edgewell that have been in this community for over 90 years. Care as much about us as you do about attracting new businesses, right? Because you can say you've created all the jobs that you want, but if we don't have people to fill those jobs, it really doesn't mean a whole lot. So yeah, any other questions or thoughts, Scott?
Yeah, Taryn, I think one of the questions, is there a greater demand on certain shift work that you have versus others?
Yeah, great question. We do work 7/24, so we
Yeah.
do find that it is a little more challenging to fill those night shift positions or even second shift positions. A lot of people do want that first shift. And we are seeing that, you talked about flexibility earlier. We do understand that over the next several years, we really have to look at how we can be more flexible for our hourly workforce, because people are now kind of expecting and demanding that. We'll never be remote, right? You have to be in the plant to work, but how can we provide more flexibility for people? And that's definitely something we need to put a little more effort into and figure out a solution there.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll come back to you with additional questions. We appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
So now we'll move on to Dale Cook, and Dale is obviously with Mount Air. Dale, you have a unique situation as well. I mean, one of the things, a huge demand you have in Delaware, is so well known for chickens, right, and poultry, and our broilers out there. So we have a shortage in the workforce. Can you share a little more and kind of on your, what happens with all the chickens and things that are happening that you're growing? And then also the different demands that you have, the hiring challenges you have, and maybe give us some kind of insight what the future looks like.
Sure. So thank you, Scott. My name is Dale Cook. I'm the Director of HR in Delaware with Mount Air Farms. I can tell you Mount Air is the country's 4th largest poultry provider. We employ about 5,000 people here in Delaware. We have about 500 contract growers, independent growers with us. What Taryn was saying is very, very similar to our situation. We have been forced to look at our strategies. I can tell you prior to COVID, we had an applicant to hire ratio of about 3 to 1. We had good applicant flow. We could fill our positions. We still had the challenges because even then there was not an overabundance of workers in Delaware, but we were able to manage. Since that time, our applicant to hire ratio has dropped to about 1.6. Our biggest challenge, unlike Taryn, is not the high skilled labor. We do have a little bit of a challenge with that, but our biggest challenge is going to be our general labor, lower skilled level jobs. We have, prior to COVID, we were staffing, we have 2 complexes in Delaware, and we were staffing those complexes anywhere from 100 to 101%. So we were able to meet the needs of our operations teams to produce our product. Since that time, we've dropped to about a 96.5% staff. For us, that's about 185 jobs right now that we need to fill. And we're just having a very, very difficult time filling those roles. You know, when you look at our turnover, how has the apt to hire ratio impacted us? It's caused about a 15% increase in turnover for us. When your selection process has to be adjusted to the applicant flow you have, you can't be as selective in hiring folks. At the end of the day, you need people to work. And so your selection criteria goes down a little bit. As a result, your turnover goes up. That 15% turnover is going to cost us about $2.6 million a year in Delaware for this operation here. On our staffing front, this required us to hire 3 additional salaried individuals to attempt to recruit and bring in applicants. So we're having to throw a lot more manpower into getting fewer people. So that's impacting us. I heard Taryn talk about things, partnership, adjusting wages, adjusting benefits. We're doing the same thing. Organizations that previously were not competitors are now competitors. At the end of the day, the wages for, across Delaware have just increased. And all you have to do is ride down the highway or walk, go up to your local gas station, and there's a sign there that says starting, and it's going to give you a number, and it's very similar to ours. Previously, those companies weren't competitors. So we're seeing that. Some of our challenges lie in housing. There is not enough housing in Sussex County to support the labor force that's needed. That's a huge challenge for us. Public transit is a big challenge. When you talk about individuals that need that transportation to and from, that becomes a challenge. Childcare is a challenge. Legislation. We have legislation right now in Delaware that's going to be very impactful to business, especially small business. And so that's going to be a challenge. So, we have a lot of challenges, I would tell you, on all fronts that we're having to find new and creative ways to address previously that were not an issue. So how's it impacting us? End of the day, in our industry, it's not something you can just turn off and on. You got to think well ahead because you're placing chicks in hatcheries, they're going to your contract growers, and then you have to process them. I can tell you at one point, we were processing chickens, but it definitely was not going to our customers in the form that they would want. We have a difficult time meeting orders when we're as low staffed as we are. And that's something we talk about daily here. So Scott, that's just some of the challenges we're facing right now.
Thank you, Dale. I know, one of the competition that you spoke of for those jobs are companies as simple as McDonald's and also the beach-related companies, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, in Sussex County, in our industry, tourism every summer is definitely something we have to prepare for. That is a challenge. But this year, in the past couple of years, you're right. It's the McDonald's, it's the gas stations, it's everything has become very much challenging. And just like Karen said, talking about opening new industry, it's kind of scary because at the end of the day, that's just more for us to try to navigate through.
Wonderful. All right, well, thank you. I know we'll come back to you here, Dale. Nakisha, I think, is with us now. Hey, Nakisha. So Nakisha is with Dot Foods, and obviously a logistics company here in the industry. And so, Nakisha, welcome. And without the workers and proper storage, obviously, the delivery becomes an issue. Can you tell us a little more about what you're experiencing with talent and recruitment?
Well, first of all, good morning, and I apologize for my tardiness, but clearly there was work that had to happen. Like you said, Dot is a redistribution company. We don't make anything, but we move everything. And clearly when we, talent is important. So right now, what we're facing, there's a shortage. There's a shortage in drivers, there's a shortage in warehouse workers, there's a shortage in leadership, and it makes it hard for us to do what we need to do. And we are part of the U.S. food supply chain. And it's backing up the food supply.
What type of, you're obviously a huge demand for the type of workers that you need. Can you tell us a little more? I know Taryn focused on this a little, but the workload, the hours that individuals need to keep it within your company.
Well, we have CDL Class A drivers. Clearly, they work according to the run of their loads. But our material handlers, which is the warehouse worker, they work 40 hours a week. They work 4 10-hour shifts, and it's back end of the week or front end of the week, which is Sunday through Wednesday or Wednesday through Saturday, day or night. And their schedules are 6 a.m. until 4:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. or 6 p.m. to 4:30 a.m. So, and there's some flexibility. We have some 3x12s. We have some traditional 5x2s. Right now, what we've learned is that what we knew before is not what we need to move forward. So there's a lot of flexibility on schedules and demands.
Well, I know you have locations around the country. Can you tell us how Delaware fits in versus those other locations?
Well, Delaware is the newest location with Dot Foods. Dot Foods is 61 years old, privately owned. We have locations in New York, Idaho, Oklahoma. We have locations in Tennessee, Georgia, California, Arizona, and we are the newest. And we have one we're getting ready to open in 23 in Manchester, Tennessee, and we have another one in Tennessee now. So where we fit in, we're the newest, so we are benefiting from all the things that other distribution centers have learned before us, and we're also going to teach the new one after us.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. I'm going to come back to everyone. We're going to talk a little about some of the solutions that maybe you have been implementing to work through this pandemic and obviously some of the crisis we have. But now I want to get a little perspective from Ron Painter, who is very involved. He has a whole national perspective on things around the country, experiencing the labor shortages. Very involved with us at Delaware Workforce Development Board. And, Ron, maybe you can give us a little more on the country itself, but also maybe focus more on the Mid-Atlantic and our competition, the states around us.
Yeah, Scott, thanks. And it's always great to be with you all. So I want to touch on 4 points if I can really quickly, and then certainly available to follow up. And I want to talk about population, automation, adult learning, and funding. And one of the things that, when we think about population, when we look over the next decade, I think one of the things to bear in mind is that by 2030, all of the boomers will be 65 plus. Meaning we're all, every state, everyone is facing this problem of aging population. The other thing to bear in mind is the birth rates have not kept pace with that exchange in and out of the labor force for decades. So there's not that emerging workforce to come into this. Immigration is at an all-time low. One of the numbers that I looked at, if we think about that 2030, and I looked at your projections in Delaware, if we think about the 10 to 15 year olds or 10 to 19 year olds that are going to be coming into the labor force, that totals right now about 116,800. So let's say 117,000. When we think about the 55 to 64 year olds, and we think about, and in 8 years, that 55-year-old will be 63. They're going to be thinking about retirement. There's about 124,000 of them. So I think that's a glimpse at the kind of issue that you might want to face. I think coming back, what that means is, I think coming back to Dale's point, and Taryn mentioned it earlier, when you think about somebody coming into the labor force, if you're running 24/7, they don't have seniority. So they're not getting that, they're not getting that 9 to 5, or they're not getting that shift. What they're ending up with is that maybe 11 to 7 shift, or the 3 to 11 shift. What do you do about childcare? What do you do about transportation? Childcare doesn't operate at 3 to 11 or 11 to 7. So I think, Scott, that's the challenge for workforce boards, is to take that issue of what do we do? What does the community do around childcare? Dale's point around transportation. I chide Kurt every once in a while, because economic development over the years, we did these nice business parks. We created really good environments. in many ways, they were disconnected from that population that needs assistance with transportation. Where is the affordable care? Where is the affordable housing? So I think there are challenges there. I think there's also opportunities. With regard to automation, there's a lot of studies, there's a lot of comment about, how many jobs we're going to lose, how many jobs are going to be impacted. One of the fascinating pieces of research that I've come across is we're starting to look at what is that impact. And this is a study out of Canada looking at a number of manufacturing facilities that have deployed automation. And bear in mind, in 2021, it was a record year for the purchase and deployment of robots and automation. What the Canadian study showed us was that, again, coming back to a point Dale made, that low skill workforce size increased with these manufacturers. So did the high-end skilled workers increase in an environment where they're using more automation. What lost were those middle skill jobs and some of the management. So there was this kind of hollowing out of in the skill progression. What that means for companies is you got to rethink. It used to be step, step, step. Now it's step, step. So how are you gonna bring that workforce? And I know Taryn talked about it. How do you bring that workforce on, and how do you skill them up? And I think that brings me to the comment about adult learning. I think, Scott, again, the challenge for the workforce boards and for post-secondary education is you're going to have to meet the learner where the learner is. And I think that means we're going to have to learn a whole lot more about e-learning. We're going to have to learn about how do we support people as they get through e-learning. We know that completion is an issue when you get there. I think it also means that employers are going to have to be more than just sitting on that advisory committee for the career in tech or for the community college. I think employers are going to have to be more involved. And I think that's a great opportunity, Scott, for the workforce board. Majority of the board of the state board are private sector. I think it bodes well for them. And finally, with funding, we see this as an $80 billion challenge over the next 10 years to upskill the American labor force to global competitive standards. 80 billion. Our main funding source right now to do that, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, is funded about $3 billion. So we have a serious problem in terms of federal funding. We're working with the U.S. Chamber and a number of others as we look at alternative ways to fund that, including things like income share agreements, where individuals can get the kind of skill development they need, and that payback is based on their wages after the skill development and after they're in the labor force. So I think that there are challenges out there. I think we're seeing some things that are kind of interesting. Again, we're working with the chamber. There's a number of projects across the U.S. around alternative financing. How do we look at how we fund all this differently? But I do think that the challenge really is for the state workforce board, for Kurt and the chamber and the business groups to really engage with communities, because these issues aren't just about business. They're not just about the skilled labor force. They're also about these community issues like transportation, like childcare, like housing, like how we're doing, what we do with career and tech education.
Thank you, Karan. I know we're going to jump into some others here, and obviously the Pew charitable study that was just done backs up a lot of what you just said about what the demands were from the workforce itself. So, question for Taryn, Dale, and Nikisha. Right now, are there any workforce training programs that maybe the state provides or the VOTEX provide that are working well for you all? Could you share and give us some of your feedback?
So I will say for Edgewell, we definitely partnering with Polytech to create apprenticeship programs has been very helpful. We do work like right now with the state for a grant on training. That's really just to help cover some of our training costs. It hasn't helped actually do the training or get more people in the door. So we do look to partner where we can and see what available resources are out there. But primarily, we have had to solve our labor issues ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we, what Ron was talking about, we are facing some of that, the adult education pieces, a lot, within this industry, we have a lot of immigrant labor. A lot of those folks don't speak English, so it becomes a challenge. What we found is, and we do have some partnerships, apprentice programs, we partner with local schools for maintenance apprentice. But we've also found we're having to do a lot of this in-house. We're having to develop and create our own. And I do have the experience of working with previous community, with several local community colleges to help develop some of these programs that are really targeted to what we need, specifically around the industrial maintenance. But what we're finding is we're having to really invest on our end internally with maintenance training programs, with ESL, classes such as that, GED classes, leadership development classes, because even finding talent at a supervisor level is very, very difficult. So we have invested heavily in our learning and development for our folks internally. We have internships, and we are now looking and not just at that 4-year college, bachelor degree, but what about those local community colleges, right? That local individual who is going to come, who's going to stay here, stay in Delaware, stay with us, and then again that maybe that hourly person that's worked their way up. So we're investing heavily in that adult education piece, and we're seeing rewards from that.
All right, thank you, Keisha.
Say ditto and kudos to my my peer panelists. We're doing the same thing at Dot Foods. We're training our own employees, and those are supported by some workforce development grants from the state. We have them on 2 sides, on our warehouse side and our transportation side. We also partner with our community colleges, with our local colleges and universities, and we also recently started a high school passport program, Passport to Dot, to get into those high school students that don't necessarily want to go to the military, don't want to go to college, but but do want to have, a meaningful earning wage. So we're tapping into that. Also working with the VOTEC schools, Polytech, the St. George's, those offering internships, doing all that, and then heavily completing and developing a fully comprehensive, learning management program internally for those employees that are loyal, that have been here and do want to make their way up the ranks.
Thank you. So going back to the panel, and Ron, you might jump in on this one too, but let's let our Delawareans jump in first if you don't mind. But are there any regulations that you think might be hindering your ability to hire and keep talent here in the state?
Oh yeah, right off the bat, the age requirement for the CDL Class A drivers to cross interstate lines. Right now they have to be 21. If we could, and it's currently right now in legislation, and we're trying to get it passed, if we could lower that age, then we could have, those employees that want to drive at a younger age, they could start driving. I mean, like right now we have a warehouse to driver program where we will pay for our employees to go to driver school, get their CDL, and also pay for them as if they're still working, so they don't have to work and go to school. But if we can get them right off the bat at a younger age and fully committed, then yeah, if we can get that legislation passed, that would be awesome.
Wonderful. Okay. Karen or Dale? Anything come to mind?
I would say the only thing that we have encountered in this last year as we were looking at all kinds of avenues was looking at foreign visas and bringing actually people in from other countries to work. And there were so few available that it really didn't make a lot of sense for us to pursue it. So that's the only thing really that we've kind of encountered, at least in the last year or so.
And with those foreign visas, Ron, you may have some insight into this one specifically, but was a lot of that limitation maybe due to the pandemic?
No, I think, Scott, it's been the tension between, we see that in trade adjustment assistance, the focus on are we taking advantage of a domestic labor force before we turn to immigration, all of the political considerations. Is that a pressure to hold down wages? Why aren't we looking at the U.S. workforce? I think that's all played a part of that. I think the inability at the federal level to get immigration reform, to get an immigration package that makes sense. I think this is an issue that, before the pandemic, we did a project we called Workforce Ahead. We traveled to eight locations across the U.S. Just to listen to workers, to education, to business. And immigration from a business perspective came up in every location. So I think, again, it's an issue that business really has to put at the forefront in addressing on legislation.
Thank you.
And I know to Nikisha's point, there is a lot of discussion about lowering that interstate age to 18.
Thank you. Dale, maybe you could touch on that, if there's any legislation that might be an obstacle or something, regulations we need to take a look at. And then maybe you could start the rolling here a little bit on, things that are working, that you find working for you.
Yeah, so I would tell you, the immigration reform that Ron's talking about, is a challenge. And you heard me mention previously that this industry, not just Mount Airy, but this industry has a lot of immigrant labor, right? There's a lot of folks in our business that don't speak English and they're not from here. So that definitely is a challenge for us. So one of the things even beyond that is we don't have the infrastructure in Sussex County to support bringing in that labor. We just don't have the ability to bring in a workforce and then attempt to house them. And this has been an ongoing conversation, not only here since I've been in Delaware with Mount Airy, but at other locations as well. So I would tell you that is definitely one of our bigger challenges, and it ties right back into the housing. If we did have adequate housing here, if we did have that good public transit, I believe that we could be attractive and get a workforce that's currently outside the state of Delaware to relocate. I believe we could make that happen. So
what's working for you? What's innovative what's working?
Well, I can tell you what's working right now is continuing to invest in our people. I think that, when you look at everything overall, we got to count on ourselves. At the end of the day, business has to be resilient, and they have to count on themselves, and they have to figure out a way to make things to be successful. And that, for us, is in continuing to invest internally in our people, continue to develop these partnerships with local schools and community colleges to invest in our people, and essentially grow our own talent. That's what's being successful right now for us.
Excellent, thank you. How about you, Taryn? What's innovative? What are you doing that's innovative and it's working?
Yeah, I would say very similar to what Dale just said, investing in our people. One of our core values here at Edgewell is people first. And we're definitely training from within. We've had some of our hourly teammates recently promoted to supervisors, some line operators going through maintenance training, maintenance into electrical. So we really see that by providing a skill set for our people, it really benefits us. We've had a lot of our new hires have been referrals from current employees, which to us tells us, hey, this is a good place to work. We just got to tap into the right talent.
Right. Nikisha?
What was working for us is, like Taryn said, referrals, also flexibility, also our culture. Dot Foods is 61 years old, and we have not laid off any employees. We haven't furloughed anybody. And during the pandemic, not only have we not laid off or furloughed, but we also continue to hire, continue to train, and also promote, give bonuses and incentives. So I'm focusing on our culture and focusing on our just internal employee engagement, referrals, and just investing in our employees. For me, particularly, I let them know that my role is to support them internally so that they can excel externally.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. So I know we're kind of getting close to our final time here. So just want to get a wrap up and then I'll close with some remarks. But maybe we'll start with you, Ron. If you can give us some feedback and your thoughts that you'd like to share with everyone here in Delaware.
Yeah, I think the things that Taryn and Dale and Nikisha talked about, these partnerships with the CTE, with technical colleges, community colleges, I think those are things that we're seeing across the country that are working. I would also go back to things that we've seen, and I'll turn to Walmart. Walmart's Academies, part of what Walmart Academies covers with their internal employees is this whole notion of what are the products that are critical to us? Where is the profit margin in what we do? I think this sense of how our business operates, I've seen that as I talk to my colleagues in Germany. German manufacturing, when they're onboarding people, are spending time making sure the employee understands the challenges that not only this industry that they're a part of, but also the company that they're a part of. So I really think that we need to do that. I think Dale's notion of we started to look at supervisor training in a different way. We're seeing that across the country with companies, that they are starting to pay more attention to this notion of what are we teaching and how are we behaving. And they're really doing a lot more work with that frontline supervisor. Because to your point, what we know is that people generally don't leave an employer, they leave a supervisor. So I think those are things that are really, really important.
Great, thank you. Taryn?
Yeah, I just want to end with what I said earlier. Please pay as much attention to the businesses that have been here as new ones coming in, because if we don't solve this problem, as you bring in new businesses over the next 5 years, you're going to see just as many exit because they can't be competitive.
And Dale?
You know, I would tell you, I think Taryn is right. At the end of the day, there's a lot of established business here. This Mount Air Farms, the chicken industry, poultry industry, we employ 9,700 people directly in Delaware. We have an economic footprint of $7.2 billion in this state. It is absolutely critical that we find a way to continue bringing talent here. It's absolutely critical that we find a way to employ and fill every job we have. Because at the end of the day, I heard Nikisha say it, for us, we're feeding the world.
Yeah.
At the end, we are feeding the world. We are sending our product internationally. And to do that, we have to have the people. In order to have the people, we have to have the infrastructure and the support from the state to make that happen.
Thank you all very much. Really appreciate it. And from the Workforce Development Board side, the governor, we have some new ARPA monies, the American Rescue Plan monies that's been dedicated and brought into the state of Delaware. The governor has designated about $50 million specifically for workforce. And we have to look at new, innovative, creative programs and try some things that we haven't done before. So, a lot of you gave us some great perspective today. And Ron, I know we're going to work very closely with you. But, one of the things we have to compete for talent. We've got some first-rate universities and colleges here. Goldie Beacom, Del Tech, Del State, UD. We got to start attracting that talent and keeping them here. We have to share that Delaware is open for business and tell students that we want them here. We've got a lot of kids that come in here and they only see Wilmington or they only see the beaches or whatever it is when beaches they hang out, but they drive by Wilmington or drive by Dover, but they spend time in Newark and on their campuses. We got to show them Delaware's open. Intern Delaware is an incredible program that the state chamber has and utilizes. Other thing we're going to be doing here is that we actually have, we're going to be conducting a study, a very detailed scientific study, a data-driven study. We've hired Zogby Analytics, and they're going to start reaching out to our growth sector businesses and others in the state. They're going to probably start that in the next 10 days or so and really give us some information. Tell us who's hiring, who's retiring, what specific industries, what roles are out there. So many of them will be reaching out to your company, so please be ready for that. Obviously, it'll be unannounced, but they'll be doing it as a third party, and we really would hope everyone could cooperate and assist us in that. We have to challenge ourselves, obviously. Do we need that 4-year degree? Many of you said you don't on that role, in those positions, which is wonderful. We've got to work with our education, our high schools and our universities, and to take a hard look at developing and getting individuals into the right programs. We have to take a look at those programs that we have been funding for the Delaware workforce for years that are providers that are training. They have to connect with you, the business, where there's jobs. One of the things we're going to be asking is that each of the providers, if they get any monies from the state, that they actually have to be connected to at least 5 businesses in our state, so that they have a job waiting for an individual at the end of that. There's a number of things we need to look inward on. And I think Dale, you mentioned it great. You mentioned you have some internal programming and training that you all have. Let's take a look at what happened to DuPont many years ago. They had a program, they had to create their own program internally, which was a safety program, because they dealt with very difficult, explosives and other chemicals. They created that program. That program is something they then marketed to others out there and other businesses utilize across the world. I would bet that many of you have those programs. We have to look inward and reach out to you and identify what's working as well. So there's a great deal in front of us that we have to do. You can reach any of us through the state chamber. We really would welcome your feedback and comments. We have to work closely together with you. I'll leave you with one last item. The most important thing that we at the Delaware Workforce Development Board can do is engage you as a business. A tip strategy study was done. That was the same company that created the Delaware Prosperity Partnership, or came up with the idea many, many years ago, that the governor then moved forward with. We have to engage businesses. That was the biggest opening and opportunity. So you'll be hearing from us, and we'll be working very closely with you, and we're looking for many of you to serve on our board. So we actually talked about a lot of the things that were really negative today, right? I mean, this is a problem. We have it, and it's going to be here. We kind of live in the age of the workforce. I know the next session, the playbooks for the future, is going to be taking place, and Michael Fleming, who's the president of the Delaware Bioscience Association, will be leading that. So we really thank all of you for this opportunity to be in front of you. We've got a lot to learn. We've got a lot to do, but we all do know that in Delaware, we all know one another. We can make things happen, and we have to get our hands dirty and get things moving. Mike?
Scott, thank you very much. And let me thank all the panelists. Great insights. We can't, as Scott mentioned, yes, we're going to have a panel discussion after our networking, which we're going to next, but got to be clear on what the challenges are before we can address all the solutions. And I think this panel and other insights that the Workforce Development Board and other chamber members have offered really helps us be more precise in identifying those challenges. So let's pivot over to our networking opportunity for the next few minutes, and then our next panel will start shortly thereafter. But again, thanks to all of you. Scott, thanks for moderating this, for all the contributions this morning. Thanks, everybody.